Hey, welcome back to EUNOIA. It's Sable Danielle, your host and spiritual mentor. During the last episode, we discussed self-awareness, reflection, and accountability. Today, we're going to discuss fear and ego. Self-reflection is funny because it's like a black hole. Once you begin, it's literally just the beginning. If you're willing to continue the work, it's a black hole of so many different topics and ways that your life and well-being are affected by things. You may begin to realize that we have emotions for a reason. I started to see my emotions as triggers of things that I needed to look deeper into. One of those things is fear. I always thought of myself to be pretty fearless, except for when it comes to bugs, spiders especially, and public speaking. I hate attention, but I love a thrill. I'm not scared of roller coasters or scary movies. I love Halloween, tattoos, and piercings. I like a challenge, but those are all superficial things. Once I began reflecting, I had to dig deeper. Digging deeper allowed me to see that I had a lot more fear than I had realized, and it was one of the main things holding me back in life. I'd spent a lot of time doing things that I didn't really enjoy doing because of my fear of letting go and my fear of the unknown. I grew up in Illinois, and I never wanted to leave because, 1, I only had one perspective, but we'll talk more about perspectives in a later episode. And 2, the main reason that I didn't want to leave was because of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of letting go of what's been my normal, fear of missing out, and the fear of failure. I stayed in relationships and friendships way too long solely because I was scared. I didn't realize I was scared, but subconsciously I had fears. I had fears of being lonely and alone. I had fears of not being able to find better. I had fears of not being or feeling loved. Fear of missing out on what could be if I decided to stick around or do more by feeding into potential versus actual reality. I'm always avoiding dancing and letting go at parties or family gatherings because of my fear of attention and my fear of judgment. Also, my sister's a real-life dancer, and she really stole that skill from me before I was born. I only participated in sports that didn't have any tryouts solely because of my fear of failing, not being good enough to make the team, being judged for it, and disappointing myself and my family. I avoid conflict like the plague because 1, I'm a Libra, it naturally makes me uncomfortable, and 2, my fear of hurting or disappointing people, or being seen as a mean person. Do you get where I'm going here? I missed out on a lot of things due to fear. Fear has stolen a lot of my time and, quite honestly, a lot of my sanity. Funny though, I was only able to notice that and piece those different instances together because I chose to reflect on my past, the past events, decisions I made, and feelings I had. I had to break it all down to understand the why. But what is fear? Fear is an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that something is dangerous, the feeling of anxiety concerning an outcome. It's anxiety or apprehension. Looking back at my life, I was apprehensive about everything. Every choice I had to make, every outcome of one of my actions, every reaction someone may have towards me. There were times where I avoided dancing with my dad at family events, which really irritates me because I now want to embrace every single one of those moments. In gym class, when I was in elementary school, I almost always avoided my turn to kick a ball or participate by asking to go to the restroom when it was almost my turn in line. Why? Because of fear. That's truly ridiculous, but it shows you the depth of my fear, the depth of how it affected me on a daily basis, how I let fear control me in unhealthy ways. Fear can literally be the thief of happiness because it doesn't allow you to embrace or enjoy the moment. It doesn't allow you to live in the now because you're so focused on what can go wrong in the future. That's not a way to live life, but that set up the foundation of my adulthood and how I maneuvered through my relationships and decisions. It took me hitting rock bottom to really face my fears in order to grow. I finally realized that fear is made up of 2 things. 1, a lack of understanding, and 2, ego. I believe that people fear things that they don't understand, simply because there are so many unknowns. So how are you supposed to know how to react or what to expect? You can't perfect something without understanding it. For example, it's no secret that I'm a dog lover. I realize that a lot of people are scared of dogs. The best way to release that fear is by learning the animal, understanding its body language, how they think, what their triggers are, etc. If you understand how the animal thinks, you can then understand how to treat it, what to expect of it, what to look for, how to respond to it, and then what reason do you have left to fear? You have then conquered the animal. You have conquered the fear. Another example is tarot. I was once fearful of tarot. I also thought it dealt with evil energies and the devil. I didn't yet understand what it was or what it was for. Once I educated myself on the background of tarot, what it's used for and how it was used, I no longer had a reason to fear it because I understood its purpose. I understood how to utilize it. There are many examples, but we'll move on to the second part of fear, ego. I don't mean the ego that says, I'm the shit, so I'm going to be super cocky. Ego represents much more than that. Ego is a person's sense of self-esteem, part of their mind between conscious and the unconscious. It's responsible for reality testing. The ego is a representative of your sense of identity. It amplifies your sense of self. It's the part of your brain that says to you, you can't do that, you'll look stupid. Remember the last time you tried and failed? You shouldn't do that, they'll all judge you. Or, do that, there's no way you'll fail. Your ego is how you view yourself. Oftentimes it represents your inner child's fears and traumas, or it can be clouded by other people's opinions of you. After I read Howard Falco's book, I Am, which you'll hear me mention often because it truly was a life changer for me, I 100% recommend. I really had a better understanding of how the ego and your mind affect your life. This book breaks down how to discover your true self by conquering your mind. Throughout the book, Howard Falco mentions I am statements. I am statements fill your ego. If you're on autopilot, your I am statements can run you and really negatively affect you. When you're on autopilot, your I am statements are formed from your outside experiences, things that have happened to you, other people's opinions of you, including the limitations they may put on you, failures that you have gone through, etc. This is why it's imperative to pay attention to them. Rewrite them if need be. If your I am statements are automatically negative, then that's a problem that we need to fix in order to be happy. Literally rewrite them every day. Say them out loud until you believe it. If a negative I am statement resurfaces in your mind, replace it. Get it out of here and immediately replace it with the positive one. We no longer allow that. That is not the energy that we want to attract. That is not how we feel about ourselves. For example, I felt weak for a long time. Not because I ever showed myself weakness, but because I listened to other people. I cared about other people's opinions more than I cared about my own opinion, and that is a huge mistake. When I went to make decisions, my brain automatically went to, you can't do that. What makes you think you're capable of that? You're trash, remember? You're weak. People underestimate you and often don't even see you. And that, my friends, is unacceptable. Those are the thoughts that you need to replace. Those are the negative I am statements that you need to be aware of. I began changing those statements. Every time you're trash or you're weak popped into my head, I trained my mind to be like, nope, you tried it. I am strong, I am beautiful, and I am very capable, regardless of how others view me. I understood what the ego was, how it's been holding me back, and how I can control it going forward. I realized that my ego was full of negative self-talk. Negative self-talk from anyone who I came across in my past who had something negative to say about me. My ego was filled with all negative words, which was then coming out as fear, judgment, failure, not feeling good enough. This is why I feel ego and fear go hand in hand. You can't really have one without the other. So how do you conquer them? How do you control them and not let them control you? You manipulate the thought. You use them to your advantage. You break down your fears. Why are you scared? What are you fearful of? What's the worst that could happen? Why do you feel that way? What is your ego trying to tell you? Do you truly believe what your ego is telling you, or are they false images of yourself? The best example I can think of for this is, spoiler alert for the people who haven't seen it, but if you haven't seen it, you have for sure been sleeping, and I highly recommend you watch the movie, but especially the scene from the movie 8 Mile. The last freestyle battle between Papa Doc and Eminem. Eminem initially was full of fears. He didn't want to go against Papa Doc, especially after knowing all the things that Papa Doc could use against him during the battle. He thought he would lose. So what did he do? He owned his shit. He took everything that Papa Doc could use against him and claimed it. He took his power back. How can something hurt you or hold you back if you don't allow it? He figured that out and he won. Papa Doc had no comeback, just straight silence. The only things that can hurt you are the things that you allow to hurt you. Essentially, that's what we should do with ourselves. We need to silence our fears. We've already been practicing self-awareness. So now that we're aware of what our fears are, we break them down to the smallest level until we can understand every aspect. This is how we face it head on and realize that fear isn't real. It's just a lack of understanding something, a lack of knowing. And nobody can make it real but you. So make sure that you keep that power. Every time you feel that fear is trying to take over, question the hell out of it until you understand where it's coming from and break it down to nothing. Then you march forward with confidence. I will say though, I personally draw the line with bugs. I don't want to understand them, so I will willingly accept that fear and stay far away from them if I can. All jokes aside though, facing your fears is what allows you to understand them. Understanding them allows you to recognize the things within yourself that may need some work. If you know what's been causing you fears, then you can try to put a stop to it, and it also allows you to understand other behaviors that may be affected by those fears. For example, in relationships, someone might be clingy. No one's talked about the clinginess, it's just a known fact. But why is it even a thing? Is it because A, you've been cheated on in the past and being around all the time reassures you that you're not being cheated on? Or B, you're so used to feeling abandoned and being left that you cling on to your person for dear life in hopes of keeping them near, all the while you're probably just pushing them away. Both of those instances are actions driven by fear and very unhealthy. But you probably wouldn't recognize that or admit it until you did some self-reflection to understand why you feel that way or why you're doing those things. Your ego feeds your fears. If you listen to that little pessimistic voice, you will for sure succumb to its negative victim mentality and fear-based energy. The ego and fear are strong forces, but remember you are stronger. Although the ego may try to pull you in a negative direction, reinforce your positive I am statements and remind yourself who you really are. That's all I've got for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll be back next week with a new one. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share so my message can find the ones who need it most. This week, I challenge you to compliment a stranger. Reinforce their I am statements. You never know who may need it or how deeply you may impact someone's day. Enjoy the rest of your week, y'all. Peace and love, Sable Danielle.